Welcome to today's episode. I am very excited to have twin sisters here today. I can honestly say I've never had twin sisters on the podcast before. So that's really fun. And they're together. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that they're together as well. I've had a mother and daughter, but not sisters. So very excited to have you here. These are the creators of the Lumen device, which we'll talk about more extensively throughout the episode. I've referenced it before in past episodes, but we're going to get the lowdown and how it was developed and all things around the Lumen today. So I have Michal and Merav, twin sisters today. You have to tell us where you're from and how this all got started. Just a little bit of the backstory of how you even got interested in bringing this incredible Lumen device to market.
First of all, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. Basically, both of us, Merav and I, have a strong background in research. Both of us did our PhD in physiology, in cardiac arrhythmia. And during the last year of PhD, we started to compete in Ironman competitions. You're familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a very long triathlon. And for us, it was super clear that in order to perform and to improve our athletic performance, we need our body engine, our metabolism, to perform at its best. Meaning our body has two sources of energy. Yes, so like a car, it can use fat to produce energy, but it also can use carbs to produce energy. Now, a good athlete will use as much as possible at using fat, and he will reserve his carb source to when he needs to have those peak performance. For example, when you are climbing a mountain. But it was the year 2011.
Yeah,
it was
like almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah. And the term of metabolism and metabolic flexibility, which this is the scientific term for that ability to use both carbs and fat and to switch between them, was not a common term. So for us, we started to dive into the research and to better understand how we can improve our mitochondrial functionality.
We are geek, so I think we are the only athletes that 10 years ago wasn't but metabolic flexibility, what exactly is this term?
Yeah, well, we like geeks. And when you say Ironman being a very long race, I mean, I would think most people are familiar. It's like the entire day. It's miles of swimming and it's a full marathon, correct? And like over 100 miles.
Yes,
biking. I mean, it's a crazy amount of exercise. I know we have one here in Madison, Wisconsin, once a year, but yeah, that you definitely need a lot of training for that.
It's an amazing competition because you need to know your body and you need patience, because otherwise you can't finish that competition. You can see, strong men that you can look on them and they look extremely fit, and after 8 hours of competition, they can't move. They crash during the road. So for us, because this term of metabolic flexibility was not a common term, so also what are the things under nutrition and under sleep and how you need to recover in order to improve your metabolic flexibility was also not common. We couldn't find a guideline for that. So we started to do different experiments, like in research. So we tested many things on ourselves, and eventually at the end, yes, we got to an amazing athletic performance, but still there was something missing for us, and that was the ability to measure. We did so many things and we couldn't really pinpoint on what had the highest impact. Is it the finish eating early? Is it eating the meatballs and pasta for breakfast and then fast all day and consume MCT, which those are like small chain of fat that you can take and the body can produce energy from that. So this is where we decided to take a technology that was already being used in hospitals and clinics and already being used today, yes, for measuring metabolism. But this technology has a lot of disadvantages. It takes 45 minutes and you need to lie down to be covered with something like an astronaut, and you need a physician to analyze the data. So it's not really accessible. And you cannot measure that on a daily basis. So in that moment, we started to develop Lumen. I mean, how can we take that technology into a single breath? I have to be honest that we didn't thought about Lumen as a company. For us, it was for our own use to have that device. But once we had it, suddenly we got a lot of curiosity around us from people asking ourselves, what is it? What are you measure and why? And then from that, Lumen was founded. And today we are almost, 10 years later with Lumen is also like a research institute because we have a lot of data and we release insight to our users and to the world. And Lumen is being used also by the scientific community instead of using the gold standard. So it's like, it's a life journey.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it takes about 10 seconds to use, just a quick inhale and an exhale, and boom, you have your reading. Like I just did mine right before I came on. And I did have, for me, it's morning. For you two, it's in the evening, but I had like a lower carb or very low carb. I had like a couple of beef sticks and some cheese and some macadamia nuts as my first meal. And I blew and it said 65% fat, 35% carbs. So it's always like right in line with what I'm eating and doing. And I have utilized it during longer fasts. And I've used the fasting mimicking approach also. And by day 3, it's showing like you're in deep fat burning. So it's really interesting, and it just takes a few seconds. So the technology is amazing. So how did you develop the Lumen? Like, what's the premise behind it? Like I'm saying, we blow into it, we inhale and exhale, but how is it actually working to measure our carbs, our energy output, basically what we're burning?
Basically, when our body, and when I'm saying body, we need to understand that it's like those are like tiny powerhouse inside our cells known as mitochondria. Yeah. So when we are talking about our body is now using mostly carbs or our body is now using mostly fat, it's not our body. Those are like those tiny powerhouse inside our cells. Those are the ones that use fat or carbs and produce energy from it. Now, when those mitochondria use carbs, they release more carbon dioxide into the blood rather than they are using fat. So the Lumen maneuver is rely on that principle that by holding your breath for 10 seconds, the carbon dioxide in the blood reach to equilibrium with the air in your lungs. And now when you exhale, we measure the carbon dioxide in your exhale air, which is basically in correlation and indicate what is happening in your blood.
The app is actually guide the user to inhale a specific amount of air. Everything is guided from the app. Hold the breath, like Michal mentioned, and then exhale. And Lumen measure the end tidal CO2 of the breath that indicates on changes in your metabolism.
And this changes from minute to minute, depending on what the mitochondria are burning, correct?
Yeah, so I wouldn't, exaggerate with, you're right, it's changed a lot and very, very fast, depends on the things that we do, but it's not like from minute to minute. So there's a lot of meaning to measure it, and you don't need to measure it in a repetitive way. But what I think the amazing thing it's allowed is, think of it like the difference between going to a physician once a year and take a blood test versus for example, the continuous glucose monitor that eventually bring data and insight into the clinician world that was not accessible until then. So actually the fact that now we are able to measure our metabolism, not only on a daily basis, but like within a day, in the morning, during fasting, before meals, after meals, before exercise, after exercise, at the end of the day, for example, it provides a lot of insight about what affects our metabolism. And I think this is amazing. Lumen just, published very interesting insight, for example, about fasting. What happened to our metabolism during fasting? So you can see that, first of all, it really depends, not one size fits all. So you are able to see in the data that it depends on your gender and your BMI and your age and the amount of carbohydrate that you ate the day before. So actually, the intermittent fasting, I don't know, do 16 hours of fasting. it depends. Sometimes you need 16, sometimes in order to reach fat burn, maybe it's enough to do 14 or you need more. So it allows anyone to actually to monitor our metabolism and take smarter decisions in our life. So it's me. I'm totally in love with the company, like you say.
No, and we talk a lot about that on the podcast, and we follow like I help people find their kind of their carbohydrate intake depending on their disease state and where they're at, what their goals are. But we do talk a lot about eating lower carb, especially if you're kind of stuck in that carb burning and you're having trouble getting to the fat burning. But you're absolutely right. Like if your glycogen stores are completely full in your muscle and your liver, you might need to fast for 24 hours before you get to primarily fat burning. Or if you're not eating a ton of carb, it can be a lot, or if you're doing a ton of exercise. So yeah, there's so many variables, and that's why it's nice to see how it's changing. It's changing from day to day. So talk a little bit about, so we said we're not going to like be blowing in the Lumen every 5 minutes or anything. There's different times of the day that you're using it to to see where you're at. Would you say it's best to blow or use the Lumen device, if somebody is really wanting to use it for a certain goal, like at the same times every day? Is it okay to just do like a morning and an evening? Or what would you suggest as like a protocol around using the Lumen?
So it's a great question, and for that, we needed to first understand, what are the rules of the game? What are the rules of the game of the mitochondria? What is a healthy mitochondria? Yeah, when a healthy mitochondria we should expect.
I need to count how many times you say mitochondria in the past 10 years. I think it will be a very nice game.
So a healthy mitochondria will rely on fat during fasting and resting. So for example, in the morning, after an overnight fast, a healthy mitochondria should rely most on fat in order to produce energy. But a healthy mitochondria should move and burn carbs when we have like a boost in energy expenditure. For example, now I'm going up the stairs, or when I need to perform, for example, when I'm doing a presentation. So cortisol is increased, which is completely healthy. It pushes our mitochondria to rely more on carbs because we need that quick energy in order to perform at our best. So when we understand that, we understand that when we are breathing into Lumen, in order to measure what fuel our mitochondria is using, we want to see, we have like two insights that we can get from that. One, to understand whether we are on the right track for improve our body engine. As long as I see that I'm burning mostly fat, or as long as I see that I'm trending from day after day to more fat burn, I know that I'm on the right track for improving my mitochondria health, and by that improve my body engine and achieve my ideal weight, or to improve athletic performance, or to live longer. Now, if I see that I'm not burning fat, now we need to understand that the mitochondria is affected by 4 lifestyle pillars: nutrition, movement, sleep, and mind. Now, Lumen is helping you to narrow down the reason why I'm not waking up on fat burn. So, for example, if Merav will take her morning measurement, and I as well, and both of us will see that we are burning mostly carbs, the recommendation and the insight that Lumen provide me can be completely different. For me, it might be, as you said, that I ate way too much carbs yesterday. My glycogen is way too much full. It pushed my mitochondria to over-rely on carbs. It caused those oxidative stress that damage her membrane, and the mitochondria is like it's tired during its wake up. When I wake up in the morning, I didn't give her the rest she needed in order to recover during the night. And this is why when I wake up in the morning, she's not able to use fat. But for Merav, for example, it might be that it's not because she ate way too much. It might be because she's not sleeping enough. So this is damage or interfere with her body sync, circadian rhythm. And this is why the mitochondria during the night could not recover properly. And this is the reason why she's not able to wake up with fat burn. So by understanding the why behind Each one of us should follow a completely different guidance. I should go on a low carb. Meravi should eat a food rich in melatonin and maybe to avoid screen before going to bed in order to improve her body sync circadian rhythm.
I think many of us, sometimes tend, to treat the symptoms instead of, fixing, fixing like the root cause of it. It's like, barking under the wrong tree. For example, I think a lot of moms, for example, to young children that they're unable to get enough sleep and they might find it difficult to lose weight. The first thing they will tell themselves is like, okay, I'm going to cut the carbohydrate I eat, instead of maybe understand that it is like a snowball. So the fact that they're unable to get enough sleep, like Michal mentioned, increase the amount of cortisol, and only that how reduce energy expenditure and a lot of other physiological process that eventually will end up in eating like the fridge at the end before going at night after 7 p.m. But the fact that they decide not to eat so many carbs, this is not the solution. They first need to be able to let their body to rest enough. And only just by doing that, it will fix the rest of the day.
That makes complete sense. And I'm so glad that you reiterate, and we talk about these foundations all the time. And, people come to me for weight loss resistance and adrenal dysfunction. And, I'm stuck, I can't lose weight. And, I'm 48, I'm in midlife, and they want to do all these fasting protocols. And, do I need to go keto? Do I need to go carnivore? And it's like, are you sleeping? We need to make sure you're sleeping and have foundational sleep before we start tweaking all of these other things. And we've been talking a ton about the circadian health and blocking the light at night in order to get the restful sleep that you need. But yeah, you don't think about it as much as nutrition, for sure. It's like when I grab my device and I'm thinking, oh, what did I eat yesterday? What did I eat this morning? And you're right away thinking, oh, it's all nutrition related, but there is so much that's involved with sleep. And from what I've seen, even if you have one night of poor sleep that's I think under 5 hours, you're 50% more insulin resistant that entire next day. And I mean, that is huge. So if you do that 3 times a week, I mean, you're just setting yourself up to be, to not be metabolically flexible and have cravings and want carbohydrates and all of those things. So yeah, sleep is definitely foundational. So would you say, with that explanation, would you say it's fair to say in healthy individuals who are sleeping well and are well rested, you should be burning more fat in the morning because you're coming off a fast, you haven't eaten? Is it more than that you're burning? I mean, you're in that restful state is why you should be burning more fat. And then as you come, throughout the day, like midday, you would be burning more carbohydrate. You're more insulin sensitive. Am I correct in that? And then are there anything else throughout the day, like what happens in the evening time? Do we just start to go back to fat burn, or does it depend on what we've been eating and doing throughout the day?
So if we just covered the wake up breath, I mean, what is the value of measuring your metabolism in the morning? We have also value of measuring our metabolism, for example, before workout. So during workout, when we have a high intensity workout, our body wants to shift to use more carbs. Now, if I don't have enough carbs in my system, my body will break down muscles, will convert them into carbs in order to produce the mitochondria, the fuel that you need. Now, in that moment, and this is, I think that we especially see it in women that try to
Overtrain
or to avoid carbs before the training because they want to optimizing the fat burn. Yeah. Now, it's exactly the opposite, because what will happen is that when our body break down muscles, because muscles are packed with mitochondria, muscles are like the home of the mitochondria. So when we break down muscles, it takes the mitochondria with them. So now our body has much less mitochondria. But mitochondria, this is the powerhouse that enable us to burn fat and to burn carbs. So when we have less mitochondria, we are much more likely to gain fat. We are much more likely to move into the in the metabolic health spectrum into more metabolic syndrome, and it decreases our not only the quality of our life, but also the, how you say it, I mean, it's shortening our life, because we live less.
Yeah.
So this is another moment in the day that in order to make sure that you have the right fuel for the mitochondria, you want to measure there. Now, another moment is after a workout. If I want to understand how I need to eat, whether I need to rest more in order to repair and to grow muscles, each one of us and each session of workout has completely different intensity, and also it's depend on the day. So by measuring your metabolism after the workout, you can get insight to how intense was the workout. If I see more carb burn, and I see that it's taking me much more time in order to go back to the metabolic state I began with, for example, I took a metabolic measurement, I breathed into Lumen before a workout, and I see that I'm burning mostly carbs. Then after the workout, I see that I use even much more carbs. I will keep measuring my metabolism. At the moment that I see that I go back to the begin where I start from, or even less, I know that I finished my recovery. So this can give me insight about the intensity of the workout. The higher the intensity, more carbs, more protein. I need to sleep more in order to support muscle growth and the proper recovery. Mm-hmm. So this is another area, and we just had an amazing research. I don't remember with
the one from Toronto
University. The one with Toronto.
Yeah, well, like we mentioned, Lumen currently being used as a measurement tool in dozens of researchers all over the world. And Toronto University, just I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, they published a study in which they measure how the metabolism post heat exercise, high intensity workout, and they asked a very simple question whether the subject, is there a difference in their metabolic effect, whether the participants ate breakfast before the workout. So there's the two group, one ate breakfast, the other didn't eat breakfast. Both groups did heat exercise, and then they measure fat oxidation, metabolic changes, and they saw that in both group fat oxidation was the same. So actually eating breakfast prior to the heat exercise didn't change the fact that both groups were able to shift into fat oxidation. And the surprising thing was that the group that ate breakfast, they felt a reduction in hunger, and also the blood glucose was reduced. So there is even a health benefit of manipulate nutrition around workout. So it's very interesting, the connection between manipulating workout based on metabolism, and understand how we are able to recover, and then to take smarter decisions about our nutrition, because then we need carbohydrate, we need protein in order to fuel and to be able to build muscle mass.
I'm glad you shared that, Sadi, because that's a common question that I get. Should I eat before my workout? Should I not eat before my workouts? How much protein? How much, it totally is, there's a lot of variables coming into play there, but that is a really interesting study. And for me, I know personally, sometimes I'm working out at a fasted state, depending on what time it is. And times I've been fed. So I personally don't see a huge difference in my energy level, but it's probably I'm assuming it's because of metabolic flexibility, and I'm able to go between, and I don't do a lot, I do mostly walking and weight training now. So I'm not really in that high intensity zone unless it's for short bursts during my weight training.
Yeah, by the way, I know that today there's, at least I think that in the last few years, researchers understand that sometimes we caught in a perspective that we need to be like in zone 3 and 4 in many of our workouts. And no, it's fine to be. It's even sometimes better, especially from a certain age, to be in zone 1, 2, you know, a little bit in the 3. It's even, I think, more important for health than, you know, touch the zone 4 and 5.
Yeah, I would agree. And I used to do a lot of running, and I would do half marathons, and I did a couple of marathons, and I was mostly in my 30s and older and early 40s when I did that. And I think I could pull it off a little better, but I had more trouble maintaining my weight where it was when I was doing all that running, probably because of cortisol, than I do now, much older and primarily walking and doing weight training a couple of times a week. So yeah, that's
familiar.
Very familiar.
Especially women after the age of 40, we are much more sensitive to muscle breakdown. So for us, weightlifting, it's more beneficial than doing aerobic and long aerobic session, which is we are much more in risk to muscle breakdown, and by that less mitochondria, and we are much more risking in weight gain.
yeah. And I think more and more information is coming out about that. But yeah, for so many decades, women thought, oh, I got to be on the treadmill, I got to run, I got to, you know, do all of this high intensity aerobics. And, you know, I remember doing step class. I'm probably aging myself a little bit, but all of those real high intensity workouts were, you know, a lot of times they felt good for a couple hours, but then the recovery was tough for sure. So go ahead.
Today is like women, we are the awareness around menopause and premenopause is like it's hardly there. Women today experience symptoms, but they are not aware that those are symptoms relate to premenopause and menopause. And because we are not aware that those are just symptoms, we are not treat those symptoms. So we just think, okay, so my body composition is completely changed, so I need to now to eat less and even less carbs, which is basically doing exactly the opposite. Because when cortisol is high, we are much more sensitive to muscle breakdown, and we need even more carbs in order to balance cortisol and in order to balance our circadian rhythm. So because of that lack of awareness, instead of treating the root cause, women are ignoring those symptoms, and there are an outcomes for that. So we have less energy, so we have less, the energy to associate with our loved one. So we are getting away also from the people that we feel close to them. We are starting to gain weight, especially in the belly. So our the way we treat ourselves is also decreased or damaging. So all of those is just because of lack of awareness that basically what is happening, that we become less metabolically flexible, but it's completely something that we can manage. And we see that women that started to take, for example, HRT, this is a hormonal therapy for menopause. So we see it in our data that once they are taking this HRT, they become again metabolically flexible. So it's completely something that we can manage, and we can also see how measuring our metabolism can be a tool in order to understand the effectiveness of the HRT that someone is taking.
I think that, overall, we're all aware that our metabolism, being affected from the 4 lifestyle elements, all of us understand that it's nutrition and sleep. Now, more and more, we understand how a huge impact it has on our metabolism. Stress, chronic stress is something that has a dramatic effect. And movement, workout, energy expenditure. And women health, at least from my perspective, it seems like there's a huge gap between what we know about male and how a lot of research, especially, in athletic performance, that most of the studies, the participants are male. Why? Because women are very difficult. I come from research, and when we wanted to take like a rat, which is a female, it was very complicated. But because then you need to understand when was the period, and to try and tag it. So we used to say, no, we are going to take only male rats. to examine all kind of, of treatments. Sadly, this is also how human research work. But happily, I think in the last few years, there's a lot of progress with understanding women health. And one of the things that it was amazing study, we just published it, about 4,000 female Lumen users. And we tracked after their metabolism during two major phases. One is during the monthly cycle. So we were able to see how there's the correlation between different phases of the monthly cycle to metabolism. And you actually see there's a very cyclic pattern. Amazing. I can share it with you later. You're able to see like the pre-ovulation, we are much more tend to wake up at carb burn versus the second half of the monthly cycle, which we are much more tend to rely on fat burn. And the second phase that we examine is women in their menopause. And what we were able to see is that during menopause, as Michal mentioned, we tend to lose our metabolic flexibility. So we wake up more relying on carb burn. And the surprising thing is that when women taking hormonal replacement therapy, they tend to wake up more at fat burn. So you actually see how our metabolism affected not only from our lifestyle, but has a huge effect from hormonal changes that women experience. And I think this is a huge, first of all, to understand that we are not tiny men. It's like we are a completely different person in the different phases of our monthly cycle in different years, depends on hormonal changes, progesterone and estrogen. We are moody and we have excuse for it. No, it was a joke.
And no one wants to study a menstruating woman that has hormones fluctuating every single day. Yeah, there's definitely a lack of studies on women. Everyone wants to study men with the same hormonal pattern from day to day. Is there anything else you wanted to expand on with the cyclic pattern with menstruating women, that any other big tips that we can pull out of there that you want to expand on?
So if you're looking on what are the lifestyle, that we should prefer during the different phases. So when our body is more relying on carbs, so if we're going back to the rules of the game of the mitochondria, so carbs help us to have those spike in energy. So when we need a boost of energy. So this is a good time to have high intensity workout or to do a weightlifting. And exactly when we are in the phase of burning mostly fat, this is where we want to optimize our fat burn. So there I will go on aerobics. And regarding nutrition, when we are more reliant on carbs, because our mitochondria all the time need that fuel, we need to have those small amount of carbs, complex carbs during the day, every 2-3 hours, in order to avoid that binge that we sometimes experience at the end of the day. This will allow us to stabilize our blood glucose without experience those drop in energy, because our mitochondria at that moment find it hard to rely on fat. So we need all the time to fuel her with carbs, but we don't want those spike, because that will cause us that drop of energy and will cause us to crave even for more carbs. And in the second phase, as Merav said, from ovulation for our period, this is where we want to optimizing our fat oxidation, our ability to use more fat. So there we can go on a low carb and to do intermediate fastings. This is what we would like to do there.
Okay, so it's after you ovulate that you would do lower fat, more fasting, or before you ovulate?
Yeah. From the period until the ovulation, this is where we use more carbs. So there we need also to fuel our mitochondria with small amount of carbs, and we can go on high intensity workout, weightlifting, things that our mitochondria will rely on carbs. And in the second phase, from ovulation to period, then we want to optimizing our fat oxidation, to use the mitochondria using fat.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I always thought it was more, you could do more or longer fasts in the first phase, and then from ovulation to the period to back off on fasting. But and I had heard the same as what you explained with nutrition, but that makes sense when you explain it that way, for sure. All right. Well, as we wrap things up, I have a lot of listeners who, are kind of same age frame as me. Some are still menstruating, some are not, but a lot of them have metabolic issues. They don't have the metabolic flexibility. They've struggled with their weight. Some might even have adrenal dysfunction. Their metabolism's kind of tanked. Can you walk us through how they would start to begin to utilize the Lumen in order to like break through a weight loss plateau, or at least get moving in the right direction of better mitochondrial health? And we touched on a lot of this already, but maybe just like break down a day of how you could use the Lumen and go throughout the day, how that would be even utilized and what that would look like.
Sure. So it's like a day in a life with Lumen.
Yeah.
So I like this question. Yeah, sure. So you wake up in the morning and you breathe into Lumen, because in that state you are in fasting and resting. And you get what type of fuel your body is using, carbs or fat. Based on that, Lumen provide you with a daily plan, what you should do today based on that measurement and based on the data that we collected on you. And by that, we understand how different things impact on you. So you will get a daily macro, how much carbs, protein, and fat, and you will also get the distribution of the different meals throughout the day. Now, if I have a workout session planned for that day, Lumen will guide me to take a pre-workout breath in order to understand if I need to eat some carbs before the workout. And then I can also measure after the workout to understand the intensity. Another things that I can do during the day is to take a measurement before and after a specific meal and to see how my body reacts to that meal. So a healthy body will see that it shifted more into using carbs after eating carbs, for example, a bowl of pasta, because it's indicate that I'm insulin sensitive. It means that insulin opened the gate on my cells and now glucose insert from the blood into the cells, and now I'm seeing the mitochondria using that. Another things that I can use Lumen for is to breathe before I'm going to bed and the first thing the day after in the morning. And by understand this delta between how my mitochondria, what is the type of fuel before going to bed and in the morning, I can understand if I'm having like enough sleep. So if I see that my body is shifted from using carbs before going to bed to using more fat in the morning, I understand that I had a good night's sleep because my mitochondria was able to do that shift, which this is what indicates a healthy mitochondria. But if I see that there is no shift, meaning my mitochondria is not using now more fat, but it stayed the same, for example, Lumen level or even more, I understand that I didn't sleep well. And by that, I can take a decision the day after to improve my sleep, having more sleep, avoid screen, eating a meal rich in melatonin, for example, before going to bed.
I think that the superpower for using Lumen is the fact that you're able to engage with your health on a daily basis. So if, for example, our dad was a diabetic person, okay, so he used to go to the physician once a year after we begged. But eventually after, you left the doctor office, you're back into your routine. Some of us, go to a nutritionist, and yet once a month, once a 3 months, but we are really unable to measure our progress on a daily basis. We are unable to be engaged with our health on a daily basis and to take smarter decisions. So the fact that we are now able to measure our metabolism on a daily basis, and Lumen can connect the dots for you. So can tell you, okay, these are the things we suggest you to change in order to improve your health, provide you the ability to work actually in under being a healthier person. And I think the fact that you are able to, to get real-time biofeedback, insight, and action items, and this like small biofeedback toward long-term goals, I think this is the superpower, being able to measure, track, and work toward health goals you have.
Yeah. And just so listeners understand, the app is guiding you. Like we're talking about how you do the breaths. But after you do that, it'll say you're burning this much carb, you're burning, or, the percentages of carb versus fat. But then it will say, it'll give you guidelines for what to eat and how many carbohydrates, and it has you plug in how many carbohydrates you've ate the day before. So there is guidance that way. So you're not left guessing, okay, well, I'm burning too much carb in the morning. What does that mean? And what do I do? So you do get the guidance throughout the app too.
And also, in time, the system learn you. So it becomes more personalized, things that you like, for example, more, and what to eat, preference, type of exercise you like to do, and etc.
Sure. Anything else you want? We've been like I mentioned before, we've been talking a lot about adrenal dysfunction, and we've talked about cortisol, but a lot of people are just trying to calm their cortisol down. And you've given us a lot of valuable insights to that. And I think a lot of times people aren't thinking about carbohydrates and how cortisol can cause your muscles to be utilized and broken down. I know that was I had kind of forgotten about that. I'm like, oh, like these cortisol levels, because I've had pretty severe adrenal dysfunction. Like this is a big deal. And I think as you mentioned, as we go through perimenopause and menopause, and our ovaries are kind of checking out on us and saying, I'm done here, we're asking our adrenal glands to take over those female hormones as well. So, we're just kind of this perimenopause to menopause time in life is just very challenging, because we have that whole transition shifting. We have our metabolism shifting. We have, I know for me, my kids are very self-sufficient, but there's still worries there. Now I'm taking care of my dad. There's just it's an interesting time of life. So anything that we didn't talk about related to cortisol, or the whole stress mechanism that you would like to elaborate on before we close out?
I want to give an example that how Lumen can be used, or measure your metabolism can be used in order to experiment how different things impact on your body. So our biggest sister, she's at the age of 50, and she also has experienced a high stress level, and she was trying to do meditation. And she breathed into Lumen before and after in order to see the effect. So for her, it's worked amazingly. Now, you probably know that each one of us, in order to reduce cortisol, different things has impact on him. So for me, for example, like this specific meditation, like my big sister did, has no impact. But for her, it did a huge impact. So she was consistently wake up on carbon. And once she started to implement the meditation and took a measurement after the meditation, she saw now how her body shifted into fat burn. So it's a tool in order to enable all of us to experiment how different things has impact on their own.
It's funny. I have a good friend, completely different thing. I don't know. We talked about all types of persona, and he told me, no, but I have a friend with this BMI, with this age, and he doesn't behave like the population. So I told him, yeah, but this is the point. There's something the true in the population, but eventually there's a single person that is out of the population. And I think this is also what you're just, mentioning. Eventually we are unable to tell anything, right? We know that this impact this, but in overall, but it's all connects, and everything impacts everything. What we have at home impact our nutrition, impact on our sleep, and etc. And the fact that you're able just to try things, what's suitable to you, what you're able to do, right? For example, you will tell me, okay, do meditation at 4 p.m. No chance I'm going to do it. So I can choose things that I'm able to do and like to do. So it's also, I think, a no failure experience, because there's many things we can try to do. The fact is to know what has impact, and then we are likely to do it, to sustain in it. And then I think it also brings us power and motivation to continue and keep doing it. Do you agree?
I agree. I agree. I agree. And I just love the fact, again, that we're talking about things other than nutrition and food that are coming into play here, because I think women especially, and we've just been kind of told this, and the guidelines have always revolved around calories and nutrition and exercise. And there's a lot of different factors that are coming into play here. And I've had a lot of students of mine recently, they're with cortisol issues, like just watching the sun rise in the morning and getting that morning light and getting time outside in nature, making a huge difference on their morning blood sugars. So definitely there's more to it than just food and nutrition, but Lumen is a very powerful little device. If you're watching on YouTube, I mean, it's just this little thing, but it can make a huge change in your life. So we have a link in the show notes, and I have a 10% off code, and we have the link down there. I think it's lumen.me/Shanna, and it's easy to get to. And I think a lot of people would highly benefit from this. And my audience isn't really elite athletes that are using it, but they're kind of on the opposite spectrum. So it is helpful with both. So we're really excited that this device exists, and all of the research. I know you are both big into research and have done your work there, but we're really excited about all the work that you've done to bring this to market, and affordable too. So you're changing lives. So we appreciate your input today.
Thank you. It's so important for us to hear that.
Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. Any last thoughts that you have as we close out?
No, take care.
I mean, imagine a world where people wake up in the morning and think to themselves, wow, I want to become more metabolically healthier. I want to improve the way my mitochondria is working. For me, this is the world that Merav and I want to leave behind. So thank you for helping with that.
Yes, absolutely. We're glad that you brought this all to market, and that you're sharing it with everyone else, and you didn't just develop it for yourself. you utilize it for everyone else. So thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.